Welcome to Spotcast, episode 44. My name is Tim Mitra, and I'm in Kile on the island of Maui in Hawaii this week. And Jonathan and Jaime are not able to join me today, so I'm just going to do this one solo. So to start off, we have some fact check. Last week I mentioned Coca Cola is bottling for Star Wars, and we were talking about various types of things in cans and recycling, especially with Jason Momoa's push for water. And it turned out, so I was looking into Coca Cola's canned products, and the biggest canned product that they have, the biggest seller, is canned coffee, and that's related to that's a worldwide export. We also talked about in the past Number One's name. Number One has always been a unique character in that she doesn't actually have a first name. That's sort of a known thing in the Star Trek universe. So, and of course, in the finale, they didn't mention her name when she was on trial. The quote that Han Solo uses in Star Wars, the original Star Wars movie, about when he's trying to put down Luke's faith, he says, "Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no substitute for a good blaster at your side." Moving to the headlines, Jonathan has posted an article here about Michelle Yeoh talking about Section 31, her new series, not officially titled Section 31, that's just a working title for now, will not be recorded or filmed until after the end of Discovery Season 3. So that's going to be coming out soon, and Michelle Yeoh is pretty excited about the fact that her character, Emperor Georgiou, is quite unique, and she plans to expound, or the writers plan to expound on the sort of more sinister side of the Emperor in the Section 31 series that's coming up. Jonathan's also posted here that Aftermath, there's an Aftermath coming for Discovery Season 2, and that is that if you remember in the finale, spoilers if you haven't seen this yet, we leave Spock and Captain Pike in the current universe, and 24th, I believe it is, and maybe it's 23rd, I don't know, I'll maybe fact check that for next week. Aftermath is a comic series that is coming out that's going to expand on the adventures of Spock, at least, and maybe a little bit of Captain Pike. And that sort of will hopefully soothe the appetites that people have for a Captain Pike series to follow his adventures. But at least it'll cover Spock's transition from Discovery to the original series, Spock as we know him. I posted a story here about Captain Marvel, that a gentleman has recorded a Guinness Book of World Record for watching Captain Marvel 116 times. His name is Steve Ruppel, and he spent over $1,400 US watching the movie. At one point, he watched it 7 times in 24 hours, and of course, there was a witness there to witness the fact that he was watching these things. But I mean, who has that kind of time? I guess this guy does. Now, by the time this recording has come out, I'm sure that all three of us, Jaime, myself, and Jonathan, will have seen Avengers Endgame. I saw it 2 nights ago here in Hawaii, in a small theater, which with nice comfy seats. Jonathan and Xavier, the Number One fan Xavier, went to see Avengers Endgame shortly before that, and I'm sure by now Jaime has seen it as well. That said, we'll talk about Avengers Endgame on the next episode of Spotcast for sure. But I just thought this was posted. I posted this in our notes just before Endgame came out, so we were hoping to record last week before on Wednesday, when Endgame would be coming out on Thursdays and Fridays in most theaters. And it was interesting that certain fans had put forward their theories of how they thought Endgame would end. And so this is not really spoilers for Endgame. This is sort of just some fun sort of things. This is all based on what people had seen in the trailer. So Hawkeye is seen in the beginning of the trailer teaching his daughter how to shoot a bow and arrow. So people were thinking that one of the theories was that Hawkeye would hand down his role as the archer in the Avengers to somehow solve the thing. Another theory is that there's one more Infinity Stone that we don't know about, and hopefully that somehow, called the Ego Gem, and somehow people would find this and be able to change the course of what happens after Thanos defeat Thanos, and where we go. So I won't spoil how Thanos is defeated in the final Endgame, in case you haven't seen it. Another theory is that Loki didn't actually die. If you remember in the original Avengers Infinity War, he dies quite early in the movie, and so some people think that perhaps he didn't die, maybe it was a hologram of him or something, and he's the way to go. Another theory is that there's an alternate universe, and that's where the people that were, dissolved in the end of Infinity War, and some in Ant-Man as well, these people would end up inside of an alternate universe and somehow come forward and save the day. Another theory is the Soul Stone contains all the supposed dead people, so wasn't really revealed until Thanos did his sacrifice of Gamora. So some theorize that Gamora didn't really die and she'll somehow come back. And another theory is that Nick Fury had been planning Thanos' defeat or demise all along, and somehow Nick Fury would come back in an ashtray and somehow save the day. Those are the theories that people put forward, and hopefully by the time you'll get a chance to see Endgame, you'll get to see whether or not any of these hold any chunk of truth in them at all. There was a bit of a spoiler in a couple of things I said there, so hopefully you'll piece together them as Easter eggs, I suppose. Another follow-up item here regarding the Oscars and the Academy Awards. Streaming movies are still eligible for consideration in the Oscar contention. The rule that they had to be viewable in LA for I think a week at a time still stands, so they still have to put movies into distribution, but also now they can be distributed in New York as well as LA. That's a new sort of ruling. There's a few other rulings that they've added more categories for makeup and dressmaking, I believe, and costuming. There's another one too, but the thing is that Steven Spielberg had argued against allowing for things to be, because he considered it had to be in the theater, but no, they've defeated this idea. And the benefit for Netflix, of course, is that they can, at the same time as they release the movie into the theaters, they can also release it into 90 countries at the same time. So it's on the same day, and it's available 24/7. So they get quite a lot of reach compared to, I suppose, movies in the theory. Oh, the other one was that foreign language films are now called International Feature Film Award. That was the other change that I was trying to remember. Oh, and animated films are now. Oh, sorry. Only animated films are considered to be eligible if they air in New York and Los Angeles. So that's a new ruling. Not that movies are, as I said earlier. Star Trek is also greenlighted an animated series for Nickelodeon Network, and so that'll be coming out soon. And that will be. Let's see, what does it say here? So they'd already had animated series in Lower Deck. All Access had sort of done that, but so they'll continue to have some more fodder for people who can't get enough Star Trek these days. So so that's Nickelodeon bringing that forward. And who put that one forward? That was Jaime. Sorry, Jaime put that one forward. Jaime is also, or Jonathan's also put forward a headline here saying the Netflix faces for future purge as well. A lot of shows are now leaving Netflix because of the other networks opening up. Disney, NBC Universal has announced that they're going to have a streaming service. So NBC Universal would take away The Office, which is considered to be one of the biggest sellers on Netflix in terms of what people watch. So that's going to be a hit. They're losing, Disney, so they're losing Star Wars. They're losing The Simpsons is going over to Disney because they own the Fox catalog. And a few other large names. Quite a bit of programming is disappearing from Netflix. So it'll be interesting. Netflix is, of course, they'll just replace it with, there's another one. Warner Media is another one that's coming out soon. And that makes it 40% of what people watch on Netflix. So it feels like The Crown and Friends will disappearing as well when Netflix loses those titles. So moving on. Next thing is Jonathan posted here that the Swamp Thing gets a full trailer. I took a look at the trailer, and basically it's a lot of people on the bayous, seeing things. Lots of strange things attacking them that they can't see, and at the end of it, you see the Swamp Thing rise out of the water, and that's where the trailer ends. It reminds me of I think there was a Swamp Thing movie back in the late 80s, early 70s, late 70s, early 80s, starring Adrienne Barbeau. I'll have to look that one up to see if that was the case. But one more thing, just before we move on to the main piece today, which is going to be talking about Game of Thrones. There was a comment on Twitter made that they didn't think that there were much shows available on Disney. Dave Mark on Twitter, gentleman that I follow, remarked that the Disney catalog has a massive catalog. In fact, Disney Plus has a massive catalog that includes all of Marvel titles, all the Star Wars and Lucasfilm titles, all of the Disney movies, of course, and the Fox catalog, which includes 30 seasons of The Simpsons alone. So that's 7,000 TV episodes, 500 or more movies to start. So that's not such a small thing. So that's a pretty big contribution from what Disney Plus is going to be offering for people. So moving on to the main piece today, we're talking about Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And so we start off the show where we left off in Episode 1. Jamie's in Winterfell. He's now being cross-examined by the council, who's Daenerys, Jon Snow, Cersei, a few others, and Bran. So he's being cross-examined by Dany as it starts off, and questioning why Cersei said she was promised she would send an army, and she didn't. She sent one knight with one hand. And so Jamie's asked why are you here? And, I'm not here for my sister. I'm here, to fight for the living. So he's here to contribute his piece to the war effort. She says, you're famed for killing my father, for stabbing my father in the back and slitting his throat, and so that's kind of why he's being looked at. And Jamie says, I did everything I did for my family, to which Bran says, the things we do for love. And he just kind of looks at Jamie, and Jamie kind of looks at him. So, obviously exchanging glasses about the first time they met, which was the last time I think they saw each other as well. Just at the end of just before we go, Brienne jumps up and says, that he vouches for Jamie, and that, he was attacked when they were traveling together, and he was her prisoner, and, they were attacked by some ruffians, and Jamie defended her and lost his hand in the act of defending her as well. She also reminds Sansa that he had made a promise to her mother to return her safely to Winterfell, which they had managed to do. So, Jon kind of leaves the council early after the decision's been made that they would take Brienne's word for trusting that Jamie was a good soul. Interesting to note that Dany's not very pleased with Tyrion for his poor counsel because he made a mistake in not knowing that Cersei would double-cross them, and she calls him a useless hand as well. So he's a bit worried about that. We switch over to Gendry, who's working in the forge, making dragon glass weapons to fight the White Walkers. And Arya comes up, and he says, have you built my weapon yet? And he goes, well, I'm building these ones first, and you're just going to wait. You really don't understand death. And picks up a piece of dragon glass and hurls it at a post. Picks up another one, hurls it at a post, and the third one lands as well in the post. And she just looks at him and says, I know death, now make my weapon first. Jamie's by the God's Wood finds Bran and asks him point blank, why didn't you tell them about what I did? And Bran says, what good would it do if we killed you now? And he goes, well, what about afterwards? And Bran says, what if there is no afterwards? Very cryptically. Dany later on approaches Sansa to broker some peace, and she says, we've been at each other's throats. I would be here. And Dany says, or Sansa sort of implies that Daenerys, or that Jon is doing what Daenerys wants, and Daenerys points out that she's actually here because she loves her brother and she believes him, and so she's following Jon, not the other way around. And they grasp hands as they're talking, and get very conciliatory and seem to be brokering peace. And at one point, Sansa says, well, what about the North? And when Dany says she's going to take back the throne, and what about the North? And Dany pulls her hand back rather abruptly to indicate that she hasn't really thought about that, or she's not really prepared to let one go. We switch over to Davos, and he's serving onion soup, and Gilly is collecting women to go into the crypt. And one young lady there, she says she wants to be a soldier and fight in place of her brother and father who were killed earlier. And so she says, well, I'd rather have you in the crypt protecting me, defending me. So later on, we find ourselves in the war room, and Bran reveals that he's had this FaceTime connection with the Night King, and so he suggests that the Night King will come for him, and so they object to using him as bait. He goes, well, what else are you going to do? So they decide to put him up for bait. So they'll protect him as much as they can. Tormund and a couple of other people from the Wall arrive, and having been through Last Keep, I think is the name of the place, he says that we have to travel around the walkers to get here, but all the people are in Last Keep or dead. Tormund tells, later on, they're having a beer or drinking some wine, and Tormund tells a story about how he killed a giant and was suckled at the teat of his wife, who thought he was a baby and took care of him. And then there's a scene where he's awkwardly drinking milk and pouring it all over himself. And meanwhile, he's trying to impress Brienne, and she's just turning up her nose. At some point, somebody asks Brienne about, whether she ever wanted to be a knight and that kind of thing. And, well, obviously she says, I can't be a knight. There's no king around here to knight me. And Jaime stands up and says, well, as a matter of fact, any knight of the Seven Kingdoms can knight another. So he calls Brienne over to him, has her kneel in front of him, and he knights her a knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is what she is. So now, arise, Sir Brienne. Arya visits the Hound up on the wall, feeling sorry for himself, and the one-eyed guy, I can't remember his name now, I saw it yesterday when I was watching the show. Anyway, I can't remember his name, the one-eyed guy who can't die, who's had his lives, been resurrected a few times through magic. And anyway, so she just gets, annoyed with the two of them and says, I'm not spending my last nights with you two miserable shits. And she wanders off, which is kind of a foreshadowing for the next episode. I'm sure Jonathan would say. So Gendry, later Sam walks up to Jorah and gives him his Valyrian steel family sword, and saying that you'd be better off with this than I would. So of course Jorah says, we'll see you when all this is through, which of course is a good foreshadowing to the fact that one or more of them will not make it all the way through this next battle. Gendry meets up with Arya later on. I think it's at this point, I'm not sure if it was here or earlier in the story, but he tells Arya that he is actually Robert Baratheon's bastard son. So he does sort of have a title, or he's not just a regular Mithy. Arya decides, well, this is the last night I'm going to be living, so I don't want to, not have enjoyed all the spoils of life. So she offers her chariot to Gendry, and they happily go at it. Jon Snow has been avoiding Daenerys. He finally catches up with him in the crypt, and he's standing in front of a statue of Lyanna and asks who Lyanna Stark is. And Daenerys was told. She tells him that her brother had raped brother Rhaegar had raped Lyanna. That's the story. And Jon says no. As a matter of fact, they were married for love. And as she died bleeding after birthing her child, he gives the child to Ned to be raised as his own bastard. And at which point he tells her that my real name is Aeon Targaryen. Bran told me, and Sam confirmed it in the writings. And he says, a secret no one in the world would know except your brother and your best friend. Does that not seem strange to you? So she's not happy. She storms off. If this is true, well, before she storms off, she says, if this is true, you'd be the last male heir to the house Targaryen, and you'd have to claim the Iron Throne. At which point, the doorbell rings and the pizza's here, so they have to go and deal with that. So some interesting things here with, Arya and Gendry and the Hound, which will come to play in the next episode, as we'll see. Some interesting tension between Jon and Daenerys over Jon's true identity, now that she knows the truth that he knows, and he's been avoiding her. And we now have Sir Brienne to sort of lead the fight and help the battle, that kind of stuff. So that's where we end the episode, and we'll have to wait and see for the next episode what happened, what transpires. So let's move on to the watch list. So the watch list, obviously, for Jonathan last week was to see the Avengers Endgame. No doubt about that. He had tickets to go see it with the number one fan, Xavier. He went. Jaime also went, and I saw it here in Hawaii on the Friday. So I think we were all first nighters. Interesting. There's a scene where Captain America does a rather amazing feat, and one of the something that nobody saw coming. One of the fans in the room yells out, "Yay!" It happens. So Jonathan's other thing on the watch list is the Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3. Again, he says, duh, again. So that's a no-brainer. And finally, Jaime has posted a piece that he found on Twitter that if Game of Thrones was an anime, somebody's taken time to go through and jazz up with, Japanese anime music and interesting drawings to make the, all the characters from Game of Thrones drawn up in anime style. So it's an interesting little 1-minute video. I suggest you watch it to sort of take that in and enjoy. Anyway, so that's it for another week. My name is Timitra, Timmitra, on the Twitter machine. That's the best way to get a hold of me. You can find Jaime as @DevWithTheHair, and you can find Jonathan as @JPKNews, all of us on Twitter. And we'll see you in the future. Bye.
If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spockcast website at spockcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter @SpockCast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. You can find details on how to help us out on our website at spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
At Sleep Outfitters Outlet, great sleep is a big deal. Save 40 to 60% every day on every Sealy, Stearns & Foster, and Tempur-Pedic. Queens as low as $249. Customer exchanges, closeouts, and floor samples. Inventory changes daily, so come in for your dream deal today. With no credit needed financing, expert advice, and up to 60% off retail, it's never been easier to get the sleep and savings you deserve. Go to sleepoutfittersoutlet.com for financing details and to find a store near you.